Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
Hello and welcome. The guest right now is Stan Phelps, who is a great thinker and author. I'm delighted to have him here. He's helped me in a lot of different ways, also with projects and companies that I've been running to come in as an inspirational force. So thank you very much, Stan, for taking the time out today. For the rest of the audience, would you please just let us know who are you and what do you do, and most importantly, why do you do what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks, Chris, for having me. So I am an author, a speaker, who looks at the future of both the customer and the experience that we provide for them, but also the experience that we provide for our employees. And how do we reinforce culture and engagement? And I've written this Goldfish series of books, which is now 15 books strong, but it's all about kind of a progression of how my thinking has developed. And it started with a simple why. I was a marketer for over 2 decades, and I just saw marketing, Chris, going in a real, I thought, the wrong direction. And I was a big part of the problem. And I decided, hey, I need to be part of the solution. And it led me on a journey of initially crowdsourcing over 1,000 examples. And that ended up being the purple goldfish. And it's kind of, my thinking is developed from there.
And what was the wrong way? I'm just curious if you can share.
So in my opinion I think marketing is too focused on the prospect. And not enough of marketing is focused on creating the experience and taking care of the customers that you already have. And the ultimate goal of marketing, and I don't know if it's even debatable, is that the best form of marketing you ever do is referral and word of mouth marketing. And people will admit that that's the best type, yet it's like less than 10% of companies have any type of word of mouth or retention strategy when it comes to creating that memorable experience.
Is it because creating the experience is harder than simply throwing a campaign out there, or is it just a mindset thing?
Well, I think we get so wrapped up sometimes in what our brand is, and for decades it was all about the promise, right? A brand is what? A promise. And I think that's a very narrow way of looking at it. I think in this day of social media, that our brand is no longer what we tell people it is. It's what people experience. It's what they feel about that experience and about what that brand is about. But it's most importantly what they tell. Your brand is what your customer tells other people.
I guess.
And so I think it's
based on what they remember, I suppose, as well, because it's not only what you experience together.
Right. And we know that people that get referred to a brand, in some cases, are upwards of 4 times as valuable to a company than somebody who's acquired through traditional means.
Tell me a little bit about the brand of the goldfish. So if you can, very briefly, because I love the goldfish story. So if you share it a little bit, why the goldfish, and then share that. And then I'd like to dive down that a little bit about the different books that you've been participating in and writing.
Sure. So the goldfish is just simply a metaphor for growth. And the idea that little things that you can do, the things that you can control, can truly make the biggest difference. And so I always like to share this because it actually comes from the punchline here comes from the Netherlands, of all places. The average goldfish, and it was my very first pet, is 3 inches or about 10 centimeters, which is about the size of your thumb, right? What's the largest, and you know this because you've been in the presentations, what's the largest goldfish in the world? And I'm not talking about a carp or a koi, right? Because they get pretty big. The world's largest goldfish comes from the Netherlands, and it's actually almost 50 centimeters, right? Which is 50 centimeters, the size of the average domesticated house cat.
Yeah.
And so the real quick metaphor is there's 5 reasons why that goldfish grows. And those same 5 things apply to everyone who's listening to this right now and every company they've ever been with. You know, it's the size of the bowl or the pond for a goldfish. That's the market for what you, it's also impacted by the amount of other goldfish in that bowl or pond, your competition.
Yep.
The third thing is so relevant right now. It's also impacted by the quality of the surrounding and the water that they're in, right? And so that's merely, if we think macro, that's the economy. You know, the ability, the nutrients could be the ability to get capital. That cloudiness could be people's willingness to purchase and buy. You know, we're in the midst of a global, you know, the likes of which, as our president here in the US would say, the likes of which the world has never seen before. Number 4 is key. It's goldfish are tiny when they're born. So how they do in the first 4 months will determine ultimately how big they get. So how they get out of the gate. The baby goldfish is called a fry, as in small fry. I mean, they have 100 brothers and sisters when they're born.
Yeah.
So what do you call your first 4 months when you're in business or you're in your job? You know, you're a startup, right?
Startup,
or, a new, and you know how you do in that first critical 4 months in a position.
First 100 days or whatever.
First 100 days. And then the 5th one, which is punchline, the most important for a goldfish, it's genetically. What are they born with that separates them from all of the other goldfish? And the stronger their genes are, and the more that they're separated, the bigger they typically get. If their genes are weak, and they're like all of the other goldfish, the less they typically grow. And the punchline is, look, assuming you've already been in your job for 4 months or you've started your business and you're way past the first 120 days, the only thing you have control over is what? Is how you differentiate what you do. And more importantly, I would say how you do it and why you do it. And that's kind of the metaphor of the goldfish. Now, the part of the inspiration came from a hotel chain called Kimpton. You'd stay at a Kimpton, and one of the unique little things that they would do is maybe you're missing your family pet. They would give you a pet goldfish for your stay.
And did they give a complimentary like stream of a fish called Wanda, so you can? Or is that going the wrong direction?
Yeah, that goes in the wrong direction. They actually got rid of it 2 years ago. It had been around for years. They got acquired by IHG, which is Intercontinental. And frankly, they succumbed to pressure from PETA and other groups to get rid of it. But for 18 years, it was 15, 18 years, it was I loved it as a little thing that would give people a reason to talk about that experience.
Like there's a lot of things that pop to mind, like the chocolate chip cookies at the hotel check-in and things like that. So I love the goldfish metaphor, and that streams through a lot of these books that I have. most of the collection, so I still have a few that I need to complete it out. But question is you've written and contributed and partnered with all sorts of really interesting people on these fascinating and valuable books. How do you make the decision? So my question is, how do you focus? So if there's so much going on out there in the knowledge and the inspiration and the customer experience and the strategy and the purpose industry, how do you focus on keeping true to the goldfish?
So to me, it's been an evolution of kind of my thinking and having gone through these processes. So again, I was a marketer. And so my initial thought was, hey, let's stop focusing so much on the prospect. Let's focus on the customer that we already had.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, the customer was the end all be all, right? Sam Walton, there's only one boss, right? And it's the customer. And they can fire us simply by spending their money somewhere else. Well, what I realized, which is interesting, I looked at over 1,000 examples, Chris. And what was amazing to me, the companies that really got it, the Kimptons or the DoubleTrees of the world, what was amazing to me, or Zappos, there's a ton of them. I have a hall of fame of about 70 companies. What I realized is that for those companies, Chris, customer didn't come first. You know who came first?
I do. The employee.
Their employees.
Yeah.
And it was a realization that, look, you can focus on the customer all day, but if you don't have happy, engaged team members, you've got no chance of creating happy, enthused customers.
Yeah.
So that was the green goldfish, the second one. And I didn't learn my lesson. I collected another 1,000 examples. That was the last time I made that mistake, by the way. But I studied how companies did little things, and part of the reason why it's green, at least here in the US, that's the color of what?
Money.
Of money. And money is proven not to engage people. It's the little things that you can do. There you go. And by the way, there's a 2.0 that came out just over a year ago of green, which I partnered with somebody on, which is amazing. It's a great update to the book. But that led me to the next kind of revelation. And I used to think, Chris, that you treat all of your customers and all of your employees the same. Right? All of your customers are, and I no longer believe that.
Yeah.
And that was the golden goldfish premise. And it was based on the Pareto principle.
80/20.
And it's the idea that simply for most businesses, 80% of profitability comes from just what?
20%.
20 of customers. 80% of sales typically come from your top 20% of salespeople, and you can go on, right? 80% of your referrals come from just your top 20% of customers. So here's the thing. It's not like you're going to treat anyone horribly, but you have to know who your vital few are.
I wonder if it works the other way. Is the 80/20 rule, like the most complaints and heat and tension come from the other 20%?
80% of your complaints come from 20% of your customers.
I guess the challenge will be because there's probably some overlap. So there's some of those complaints that are coming from super loyal, super important. Right. Listen to that, and there's probably some coming from, well, that's just somebody having a bad day. Who
So really quickly, about 8 years ago, I started doing work with IBM as what they consider a futurist program.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone else wants to call you a futurist, more power to them. If you call yourself a futurist, that means you're, how would you say it in Dutch? A klotzak, maybe? I don't know. I
think that fits. Yeah.
Working with IBM.
I don't think the futurists or the self-proclaimed futurists, maybe didn't, forecast this Corona crisis on a timely basis. So it's kind of hard to.
Here's the thing. Working with IBM, I just realized the role going forward that technology, data, and analytics were going to play in providing a more responsive, customized, and frankly, a lot of little data that would help create a better experience. One that was more predictive, one that was more responsive, and that led to the blue goldfish. Now, I probably can't take you through all. I just finished the 10th color last month, but I'm not going to take you through the next 6 because it would take too long. But suffice to say, mostly it's been revelations on my part of what I see is important, whether it's purpose, happiness, generational insights, as we have now 5 generations in the workplace. Being able to handle pressure when it comes to both sales and client management. And the latest one was our ability to communicate, which is we do more of this virtual type of stuff, is absolutely key and a game changer.
And looking at the Stan Phelps Enterprises, this whole business machine that you've built underneath you, and maybe this is speaking to people who are aspiring authors and speakers who want to sell their knowledge, like myself. I'm following in your footsteps and just eating up the little things that I can learn from you and others in our network that we know. How do you grow your business? I don't want to really say monetize, because that's really the wrong angle on it, but eventually you need to capture value somehow, because
right.
you're creating so much value and insights and help for others. How does someone make that their work life?
So if you want to make it as an author, and how you monetize it is not through selling books.
Mm-hmm.
I hope to pop anybody's bubble there. Unless your last name is Rowling, King, Patterson, Godin, Gladwell, you're not making money and supporting yourself by selling books. Books are a great vehicle to show how you've went in depth into something and how to break it down for someone. But how you monetize that is really through keynotes, workshops, virtual programs, coaching, consulting. Now, for me, in the beginning, you try to do everything. And what you have to and you would back this up, Chris, what you learn is, one, if you try to do everything, you're going to be maybe moderately good at some things. And so you've got to realize, one, who your target is, and two, where you can add the most value.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, I didn't enjoy really coaching or project-based consulting. And so I've tried to eat my own dog food. I lopside in keynotes and workshops, whether they're in person or now, like I'm doing later today on the yellow goldfish and the purple goldfish, more virtual.
Yeah.
And people overcomplicate, I think, how difficult it is to succeed as an author and a speaker. Really, you've got to just do 4 things. One is you've got to have world-class content that actually solves problems. Right? I don't care if you've got the greatest story, if it's not addressing a pain that somebody has and solving a potential problem, it can be a hobby, but you're not going to make a business of it. Yeah. 2 is more of what we call your platform skills. And simply, you just have to be able to present it in a way that's compelling, engaging, and memorable. You have to be able to create engagement. And then the last 2 seem really simple, but people trip themselves up because this is a word of mouth business. Over 70% of the engagements you get are through people that have already seen you or have referred you to someone who's looking for a speaker. So the number 3 thing is this: you have to be easy to work with. Right? And it's all about what I write about. You have the value you provide, and then you have the maintenance, what it's like to deal with you. And unfortunately, speakers have a bad rap. And number 4 is going to sound ultra simple. You got to finish on time.
Yeah. Well,
and these are not my 4 things. This was shared to me by a fellow speaker named Mike Staver, but it was like a light bulb moment. Like, you could try to do 100 different things, but if you're not ticking those 4 boxes.
Well, the finish on time reminds me of this one that I just read delightfully. and I consider myself an okay speaker, probably better than the average dog. But when I was reading through this, there were so many tips and tricks, and one of those things was just absolutely respect the time. And amen. So what I love about those
there's no excuse, right?
Yeah.
That's a cardinal rule. It doesn't matter if the person before you started and took some of your time. Doesn't matter if you had a technology issue. Doesn't matter if you got interrupted by something that happened virtually or at the event.
Yeah. In
person at the event. That's the only cardinal rule of speaking.
And I am watching the time, by the way. I learned from you already. So maybe a question a little bit off our script, but just a very a personal, meaningful question. As we've known each other for many, many years, and I do have a tendency to overcomplicate and over-engineer, and my life is one of discovering as a professional generalist, and then always sort of going wide and then narrow and wide, and for me it goes narrow and narrow. In order to achieve those four things, I guess you didn't do that overnight. You probably, I hope, or I'm doing something wrong, because what I'm finding is it's a constant, hey, this is a new revelation.
Right.
Talk to people about it, expose it to the wild, get kicked in the head, and celebrate. So like, hey, that really worked, and that really didn't. And then, for what I find, it's just a constant iteration. Is that what it was for you, or do you have any smart cuts for that journey?
There are no shortcuts
for an easy question.
and there are no we say this is a great quote by a former quarterback named Roger Staubach. There are no traffic jams on the extra mile. Like, 80% of people, when asked if they've got a book inside them, say, "Oh yeah, at some point in my life, I've got a book." What percent actually write a book?
That's a fraction of one. Yeah.
1%. So here's the thing. I mean, if you feel like you've got that burning idea that you need to share, make sure that, some people will tell you, like, if you want to become a speaker, just go out and speak 50 times.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to really hustle. And it doesn't matter if you're in front of Rotary or, somebody's mastermind group or Toastmasters group. Go out, and there's no shortcut. Because if the only way that you succeed in this is through word of mouth, it's like a chicken or egg thing, right? How can anybody refer you if they've never heard you speak?
They've never seen you, yeah.
Now, there are some ways I would tell you, like, I wish I got to go over the fear of doing my own video 8 years ago, and I did more of it on a constant basis. Mm-hmm. Like, that would be one shortcut. Because in absence of being in the room, video does convey that ability to engage and the ability to tell a story that's memorable.
Yeah, and from my own experience, I think your own confidence, I guess, or your capability of communicating via video. I was confronted by a business coach, I guess late last year, and her very clear statement, confronting statement was, "You've got so much in you, start publishing it, even if it's really incomplete. Just start putting little pieces out." And my first videos were horrific. In fact, they're really bad. But I was delighted that I was doing them. I was even, in New York once, trying to fulfill my, 30 videos in 30 days in the back of a taxi, making this damn video, because I just got to do this thing. And I love it. And then time goes on and it gets more and more refined. So on the book question, there's two schools of thought. I'm curious your opinion. The one is, if you, like you said, if you have a burning idea in you and you want to express it. And the other that I've heard recently is, write a book about something you want to learn or you want to be an expert in, because that is probably more of a, enriching journey or something like that. Do you have a?
Yeah. What I love about I would say you can do it both ways. One, if you've been a SME, subject matter expert in something, right? And you've you've kind of seen how the sausage is made in the background and the missteps that you can make. By all means, share that. But if you can also do it the way that I do it, which is I have an idea, right, an insight that I then go out and I find somebody who's that subject matter expert. But I don't stop there. I go and collect hundreds of examples through crowdsourcing and through research and through reading books, right? And I put all of those things together, and then with my co-author, we look through and we try to find the patterns within those hundreds of examples. And when you can start to see patterns, then it allows you to start to put a framework around it. And that starts to become kind of the skeleton of the book.
Yeah.
I do want to share one thing, and you hit on it, which is perfect. And this is speaking, this is writing a book, and I love this quote. My buddy spent a few decades in the Navy, and he would tell me this. He would say, 70% perfect, 100% done.
Yeah. And perfection
and here's
is the enemy of profit. Yeah.
And here's the same thing when you are presenting, no one has ever given a perfect speech, right? No. It's in what's called an asymptotic. Like, you can always try to get to that line that's running parallel, but you're never ever going to touch it. You can get close. So here's the thing. Don't get wrapped up. And I love that example of being in the back of the cab. Presenting is not about perfection, as my friend Stephanie Scotti would say. She says it's about connection. You're not just spitting up information. You're conveying feeling. And once you get over yourself that you have to be great and it has to be all perfect, and that's when you start to become in the moment your best self.
Yeah. No, beautiful. And we've got a couple minutes left. Two last questions at least. One is, as you're going through that, this is a question about your own mindset or motivation or your own, you're working, you are your brand. Corona crisis happens, shit happens. What do you do as a solopreneur or, an independent expert to keep things moving, keep you motivated, keep you getting up in the morning? I assume you get up every morning.
I do.
What keeps you going?
I check the pulse. Yeah, all good. So, I really took this as an opportunity. I was finishing the 10th book, right? And so sometimes you forget what you learned. And so I took this as an opportunity to go back and reread all my stuff and look at it with new eyes.
Wow. And
so I don't know if you recall this, I did 29 days straight of free ebooks.
Yep.
Hey, look, knowledge should be free, in my opinion. And I love Amazon because they give you an opportunity as an author, if you opt into it, to make your books free. Now, I know that people with great intentions will download it, but at least I've got them to think enough. And every day for those 29 days, I would write a post about a different book in the series. And I'm in week number 8 now. When that finished, I decided to do a webinar series for 9 of the 10 colors. And it's called the Back to Black webinar series. It's been every Tuesday. I know you've been on one or two of them.
Yeah.
So that was also an opportunity. Hey, stay engaged in the content. So where I spend the majority of my time is on LinkedIn. And I write a post at least a couple times, if not daily, called the 1299 hashtag the 1299, which is just they give you 1,300 characters. I do 1299. Yeah. I go right up, bump up to the edge. So that's a place, or my website is stanphelpsspeaks.com.
Outstanding.
Learn more at ebillion.com/podcast.